Hi friends, we're continuing with our read aloud of One False Note by Gordan Korman today. I was supposed to read just chapter 6 to you yesterday, but I got a little carried away and I read part of chapter 7 too. So today we'll finish chapter 7. We're starting on page 50 and we'll go through finish chapter 6 and go to chapter 7 as well. So I guess I was supposed to read 5 yesterday. Anyways. He was serene. I doubt Irina watches much Cartoon Network. You ripped off a Russian spy. You could have gotten Nellie killed, and maybe us too. Dan was outraged. Why are you yelling at me about what didn't happen? In case you haven't noticed, I did something good. We've still got the diary, and Irina's going to spring Nellie. Do you think it'll be a real prison break? Too bad we can't watch. Amy looked grim. I honestly don't want to think about what a KGB agent is capable of. Whatever she can do to the Viennese police, she can turn on us at any moment. He couldn't hold back a grin. But right now, tonight, we got the better of her. That's something to celebrate. Who's celebrating? Came a weary voice from the doorway. Nellie! Amy bounded over and threw her arms around the au pair. She took a step back, frowning. How did Irina get you out so fast? She just left 5 minutes ago. Nobody got me out, Nellie replied. They just let me go. They think I'm a deranged Jonah Wizard fan. Apparently the hotel's full of them. A couple of idiots actually jumped off the front balcony. Can you picture that? In Technicolor, Amy said bitterly. That low-down KGB reject, Dan fumed. I can't believe she cheated me, right when I was in the middle of cheating her. Anyway, it's been a long night, Nellie yawned. Those get-a-livers at the hotel wouldn't part with their precious maid's uniform, so the cops had to drag me over there to hunt down my clothes from that cart, which was back in the basement with 50 others. Then I didn't want to lead them to you, so I had them drop me off at Hotel Wiener. I've been walking ever since. But don't worry, it only rained for the last half mile. She toweled her hair off with her sleeve. Is it just me, or does it smell like fish in here? We got the diary, Amy told her excitedly. Let's get some sleep and we can look at it tomorrow morning. We know the Holtz, Irina, and Jonah are just a heartbeat away from us. We've got to move fast if we're going to stay ahead. When Jonah Wizard and his father returned flushed with victory from the DVD launch party, they found a team of maintenance people sweeping glass fragments from the marble floor of their suite. Both ran to stand directly beneath the chandelier where they had hidden Ann Earl's diary. The dark shape was no longer there. A few strands of crystals hung broken. You promised Jonah extra security, Mr. Wizard raged at the hotel manager, who had gotten out of bed to apologize to this very important guest. We believe it was harmless, Mynheer, the manager soothed. A lovesick girl. Your talented son has this effect on the young ladies, yes? The Wizards didn't believe a word of it. It was no mere fan who had broken into the suite and stolen Ann Earl Mozart's diary. This could only be the work of one of their 39 Clues competitors. A Cahill inside job. Yo, man, the TV star addressed the hotel manager directly. How about you describe this stalker chick who loves me so much she broke into my crib? The manager held up a mugshot from the Vienna Police Department. The famous face creased into a frown. When you kicked back with Hollywood A-listers and the Giga celebrity crowd, it was tough to recognize your average nobody off the street. Yet the woman in the picture looked sort of familiar. Why did Jonah know that person? Then he noticed the nose ring. It was the Cahill kid's nursemaid, Nancy or Netta, something like that. So Amy and Dan had made it to Vienna too. Worse, they'd turned out to be a step ahead of him. Jonah Wizard didn't like to be second best at anything. Not in the TV ratings, not on the pop charts, and definitely not in the contest. When you're on top, you've got the confidence. The confidence gives you the attitude, and the attitude is what keeps you on top. A twinge of misgiving vibrated in the deepest, darkest recess of his mind. Yeah, he was number one across the board, dominating just about every category of the entertainment industry. And he deserved that success. He'd earned it. Sweat and hard work, man. Talent. That wizard mojo. But it doesn't hurt when your mom is Cora Wizard, with mucho connections in every field of the arts. The megastar grimaced. This was why he could never let his guard down. One little setback and he was already starting to doubt himself. If you lose even once, it becomes a habit, and before you know it, you're a loser. He couldn't allow the Cahill kids to get the better of him. Luckily, he knew something about that diary that Amy and Dan still had to find out. Chapter 7. Diaries were not Dan's thing, not even when they were in English and written by people he cared about. He kept his distance, trying to interest Saladin in a tin of tuna fish, while Nellie and Amy huddled over the leather-bound journal. Nellie was translating Maria Anna Mozart's flowery, old-fashioned script. "Anything good?" he called to them. "It's a tragedy," Amy replied. Nan Earl was one of the greatest musicians of her time, and yet very few people have ever even heard of her. She was a great genius, every bit as brilliant as her brother. But in those days, girls were just supposed to get married and cook and clean and have babies. Dan looked disinterested. "I never heard of her brother either, not until this contest. I mean, I've heard of Baby Mozart, the video." Nellie scowled in his direction. "You'd still recognize a lot of his music. We're talking about some of the most famous melodies of all time. Even Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. The music to that was written by Mozart." "You can only guess what Nan Earl might have contributed if she'd been allowed to develop her talents," Amy added. "I don't care about music," countered Dan. "Did she contribute clues?" Amy shook her head. "There are no notes scribbled in the margins or anything like that." "There's a letter from her brother pasted in here," Nellie supplied, "but it seems like he's talking about the time he quit his job. He said he wanted to use his contract as toilet paper." "Really?" Dan was suddenly interested. "Mozart said that? Show me." "It's in German, dweeb," his sister told him. "They have a word for toilet paper, too." "Yeah, but I didn't think a fancy guy like Mozart would know it." "Hold it." Amy's voice was full of alarm. She turned the next leaf, peering intently at the spine of the notebook. "There are pages missing here, at least 2. Look." The three examined the diary closely. Amy was right. The thief had been extra careful to disguise his crime. The missing material had been cut out with a very sharp blade. The excision was almost unnoticeable. "Do you think Jonah did it?" Dan breathed. "I doubt it," Amy replied. "Why would he bother to hide the diary in the chandelier if he'd already taken the important parts out of it?" "To throw us off the trail of the real stuff?" Dan suggested. "Maybe. But remember, this book is over 200 years old. Those pages could have been removed any time between then and now. For all we know, Nan Earl cut them out herself because she spilled ink on them." "No offense, you guys," Nellie put in, "but I've been around your family long enough to know that this has Cahill written all over it. I've never seen such a bunch of backstabbers in my life." "She's right," Dan said glumly. "Every time we think we're making progress on the 39 clues, someone turns out to be a step ahead of us." "Calm down," Amy told him. "The real clue isn't the diary, it's the music. And we're the only ones who have that. Let's take it down to the lobby. I saw a piano there." They made a charming picture, the American girl at the piano, her younger brother at her side. It would have been nitpicking to notice that the sheet music was written on the back of a Ural napkin, and that girl played falteringly. "Good old Aunt Beatrice," Amy murmured to Dan. "She cut off my piano lessons so she could pinch a few more pennies." Aunt Beatrice was their grandmother's sister and their legal guardian. It was thanks to Aunt Beatrice that Amy and Dan were now fugitives from social services in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. "Play the new stuff," Dan suggested. "The part that isn't in the real song. Maybe a trap door will open, or we'll call up the Cahill genie or something." She tried it. A light, airy melody, very different from the heavier classical piece around it. Suddenly there was a woman standing beside the piano, lifting her voice in song. The lyrics were German, but it was obvious that the tune was familiar and brought the lady pleasure. "You know this song," Amy exclaimed. "Is it by Mozart?" "Nein, not Mozart. It's an old Austrian folk song called Der Ort, wo ich geboren war. This means in your language, the place where I was born. Thank you for playing it, my dear. I haven't heard it for many years." Amy grabbed Dan and hauled him to the privacy of a small alcove with a fireplace. "That's it. That's the clue." "What, some old song?" "It was a message between Mozart and Ben Franklin." Dan was bug-eyed. "Okay, but what does it say?" "It says, 'Come to the place where I was born.' Mozart was born in the town of Salzburg in the Austrian Alps, and that's where we have to go." The rental car was an old Fiat that squeaked in every joint and didn't like going up Alps, but didn't mind coasting down the other side of them. Part of this might have been Nellie's fault. She'd never driven a stick shift before. "That's just great for a trip into the mountains," Dan complained. "Hey, you want to get behind the wheel?" Nellie demanded, insulted. And Dan said yes so readily that she was sorry she'd asked. Saladin spent the entire 3-hour drive car-sick, but luckily, since the cat wasn't eating anything, he also had nothing to throw up. The trip would have been roomier and much more pleasant on the train, but their encounter with the Holts on the ride from Paris had soured them on travel by rail. On a public train, they were too easy to spot. They could be more anonymous in a car. With the latest lead in their hands, and theirs only, surely all the other teams would be gunning for them. Despite the uneven ride, the scenery was spectacular. The Autobahn wound through the Austrian Alps like a ribbon twisting among the feet of giants. Soon their necks ached from craning out the windows, gazing up the dizzying snow-capped peaks. Now this is more like it, Nellie approved. I came on this trip to see the world, not the inside of a Vienna police station. Even Dan was impressed by the soaring mountains. I'll bet if you roll a snowball off the top, by the time it gets to the bottom, it could knock out a whole town. Shortly after 2, they reached Salzburg, a small city of gleaming spires, Baroque architecture, and picturesque gardens nestled in green hills. It's beautiful, breathed Nellie. It's bigger than I expected, Amy put in ruefully. We have no idea what we're looking for, or even where to start. Nellie shrugged. Seems pretty straightforward. The song is The Place Where I Was Born. We'll get a guidebook and find the actual house where Mozart grew up. The moaning from Dan was even louder and more pitiful than Saladin's constant complaining. Oh, no, you don't. You're not dragging me to another Mozart house, not when I haven't even recovered from the last one. Grow up, Amy said sharply. We're not tourists. We go where the clues are. How come the clues are never in the local laser tag place? Dan whined. He sat up suddenly. Look out! A pedestrian rushed into the road right in front of the Fiat. Nellie stomped on the brake with all her might. The wheels locked and the car skidded to a halt mere inches from mowing down the elderly jaywalker. Nellie was almost berserk. Moron! She brought her arm forward to deliver a blast on the horn. Amy grabbed her wrist. Don't! She hissed, trying to duck behind the dash. Look who that is!